All right. Well, thank you for everyone who signed up and then registered for this virtual event. And this is organized by the Development of Regenerative Yields Cooperative. One of the first many series of the virtual events we're trying to put out here in collaboration with the Organic Transition Program in Arizona, trying to really help producers here on the ground understanding some alternative tools and ways to grow food fiber in a better way. And this first virtual event, we're very excited, invited our program partner, Unlighted Soil Algae, as well as a couple of growers, Herb and Mollie, who has not only tried their product, but also are just phenomenal growers in the regenerative agriculture and true organic agriculture space, have years of experience to share this. So without further ado, I'm just gonna let all of them to introduce themselves and their company, what they do a little bit. Herb, why don't you start first?
Sure. Thank you, Yadi. Uh, I'm a regenerative citrus grower. I'm located in South Georgia, uh, which is kind of unusual. There's a new little citrus industry in South Georgia, about 150 growers. As we've gotten better varieties and microjet irrigation, we've moved up into colder climates. I've probably got some of the most unusual background here. I spent my career in the chemical industry, and I retired from 33 years with Bayer. And in deciding to be a grower, I planted citrus, decided it would be organic, maybe for almost financial reasons, and absolutely discovered the whole regenerative movement and have become enthralled by it. And I'm very excited. My background is research. 25 years I spent in field research. So I do a lot of testing. Everything that I put out, I evaluate first. I have a lot of replicated trials. I've been doing DNA on my soil for 4 years, and have watched the evolution of the soil. So I've become certified organic, certified regenerative, and I'm waiting on a USDA organic certification for my inspection to see. So there's been a lot of support, a lot of encouragement from advisors and participants. EnSoil, that's sponsoring this today, has been a big encouragement. AEA with John Kemp are advisors to me using their products. B Crop is the biomakers DNA analysis have been real supportive of what I'm doing in my growth in testing and making comparisons of conventional versus regenerative. And I've been able to get a small USDA SARE grant, which has been a help. And that's been real interesting. I'm looking at a comparison of different composts and compost teas as part of this SARE grant, big replicated trial. So my grove, here's some of the regenerative goals that I have. This is how I'm growing. My goals are just absolutely tree health, measuring it by bricks, the tree structure, tight internodes. I use cover crops year round. So I plant 10 species in the fall, and then a different 10 species in the spring, which is tough. The hot weather is rough on the cover crop through the summertime. But I'm using that and really believe that it's contributing to completely revitalization of the soil. It's real evident when I do permeability of the soil, just a penetrometer pushing down into the soil. In a conventional area, it'll go in 3, 4, maybe 5 inches. And in my regenerative, all around the tree that have had tree roots, cover crop roots, microbes, the probe will go 30 inches deep usually. Completely, you actually walk across the rows and the ground is actually spongy. It's changed. And the DNA tests have all validated that. It's been real exciting to see. So as a result of all the regenerative practices, the insect pressure is really low. There's one exception. We've got a citrus leaf miner that's an introduced pest, so there's no natural enemies, and that's been really hard to control. But that's the only thing. I've not had any diseases, don't do any spraying except for that one leaf miner, whereas all the growers around me are constantly in the field with chemicals. Here they use Roundup probably 4 times a year. The ground is just sterilized. One of my goals in the way I measure a lot of the practices I use is just leaf flush. Citrus genetically can flush 5 times a year. And it takes 25 leaves to fill 1 fruit. So the more leaves you have, the bigger yield potential you have. So that's always been my goal, is to get up close to that 5 leaf flushes a year. And I can see that as a response in a lot of the regenerative practices I do. As far as microbes, I've done a huge amount of inoculation, mycorrhizal fungi, and a wide range of microbes. I feed them constantly. I alternate, feed the microbes, feed the tree. So every 2 weeks, I do one, then the other, one, then the other. So they're really robust. It was amazing seeing the explosion of microbial activity as soon as I started with the DNA testing. It jumped, when the first 7 months, it jumped from 670 species up to 1,100 just for my regenerative practices and taking care of those microbes. So my goal in all this is nutrient-dense fruit, something that's going to be different and exceptional and nutrient-rich. So I actually sampled last year. I had a real limit. My grove is 4 years old. Last year I had a real limited harvest, but I had page mandarins, which is this fruit right here. This is mine on the right. And I had a couple of varieties of grapefruit. So I picked pink frost grapefruit and page mandarin. And on the same day, I went to conventional groves, just their standard pesticides, synthetic fertilizer, bare ground, intensive Roundup, and picked the exact same variety of fruit. This one, I knew it was the same variety. This producer of page mandarins actually sold me the trees, so I know it's the same genetics. I juiced them and froze them same day, and then sent them to Eurofin's lab, which is a USDA certified lab in North Carolina, and was anxious to see, kind of held my breath, and the analytical results were unbelievable, beyond all my expectations. In general, it's hard to summarize, but in general, the vitamins, they analyzed 3 different vitamins, and they were 2 times higher. The carotenoids in general, overall, and this is a lot of anti-inflammatory, antioxidants. They're all the precursors to vitamin A. In general, averaged together, they were 3.5 times higher. But the unbelievable one was flavonoids. 4 of the flavonoids were completely missing. they were absent in the commercially grown conventional fruit, but averaged together across all of them, they were 16 times higher in conventional. I mean, in my regenerative fruit. This is the average between both Page Mandarin and the pink frost grapefruit. So was a lot of data. It's been really encouraging to now be able to look at it and know that this is what we can talk about when we are trying this year to begin selling the first real harvest, which will start in November. So we're excited about doing that and finding good, effective ways to communicate people that this American health crisis is, sadly, it's related to the food that we're eating. Averaging it all together across the board, a person would have to eat 8 citrus fruit, to get the same nutrient value of one of the ones that I grew regeneratively. So pretty amazing, and I think it's validated the long road and a lot of hard work to get here. I acknowledge regenerative is harder. There's some real challenges, but this is the proof, and it's worth it, and it's been really exciting. So back over to you, Yadi.
Wow, Herb, thank you. This is very rich information. And, of course, getting data is one of the hardest part, but also there's, to the growers, there's a lot of ways to, start without diving into a deeper data and then just looking at a whole ecosystem and then getting everything together. And Mollie, you've had a lot of very different experiences between your time in California and Texas right now. Can you tell everybody a little bit about your operation and what you do in this world?
Yeah, I started out as grew up on a farm, so I'm a second generation farmer. But I moved to Los Angeles and eventually opened vegan restaurants. And I was going about my business thinking that not eating meat was the answer for the environment, because I was brainwashed to believe that. And then I listened to a TED Talk by Graham Sate in like 2013, I guess. And I realized that food waste was really a huge problem, bigger than cows and all these things that people were telling me were the problem. And I had these restaurants and we were just throwing tons of food into the trash. And at that time, Los Angeles didn't have any composting program. And in fact, it was illegal to pay someone to take your compost. You could take your own compost, but it was illegal to pay someone else to do it. And so I decided to buy a farm. And it took many years. My husband didn't have American citizenship, and it took us a long time, but we bought a farm so that I could compost all of the food that was going to the landfill in my restaurants. And through that journey, I thought, okay, I'm going to have a vegan regenerative farm, and I'm going to prove that I could regenerate the soil and do regenerative agriculture, sequester all the carbon, not let any of the food go into the landfill, and just use rescued animals, and nothing is ever going to die. Well, that's a lie. And I learned really quickly, nature taught me really quickly that there's death in all of our food, whether we choose to eat meat or not, that life and death is cycling constantly. And that is how everything is living. And so I was bringing all of the spent grain back to the farm. I was bringing all the spent grain, all the food, everything back to the farm. Because the restaurants were really busy and had this massive amount of food, we were able to take this fallow land that was a citrus orchard, and they had knocked out all the citrus trees to make it into a avocado orchard, and then like planted a few avocado trees and just kind of gave up financially. So it was just fallow Roundup land with a few fruit trees, and it had 0.01% organic matter. And the water infiltration was taking 4 minutes for 2 cups of water in a 3-inch tube on the ground to go to infiltrate into the water. So you can imagine you put a pipe on the ground and you pour water into it, and how long it takes for that to seep into the ground. After year 3, I was at 19 seconds for 4 cups of water. And we went up to the last soil test I had before I left was at just almost 20% on the most fields. And then a couple fields were actually 21%. So we had just above 20% as our average for the land. Now, those are crazy numbers, and we did have a ton of food waste coming out of the restaurants that we were able to compost and put down. But like he was saying, we were growing citrus, we were having multiple flushes a year. We were having this really high quality products, and the neighbors that planted citrus trees or avocado trees at the same time as me had double the size trees. And so sometimes it can feel disheartening. You're working so hard, and the neighbor has this like giant, like crazy Franken tree that's 3 times the size or double the size. But we had some growing and learning, and actually the neighbors started copying us after there was these heat spells, and we were losing trees. And I lost 1,000 trees in the first heat spell because it was fallow land, and then we planted trees into that fallow land. Well, some of the things that we did to manage that heat was, of course, cover crops, because plants are God's, like to say air conditioner, but it's really more like a swamp cooler would be accurate. Plants are God's swamp cooler, so they're always aspirating moisture. And so when we replanted all of those avocado trees that died the first year, we planted popcorn between all the rows. And the popcorn grew up big and tall and shaded those avocado trees so they could get past those very hot seasons. And then we started to say, well, in all of our aisleways, let's cover crop with vegetables. So by the 4th year, we were pulling $500,000 of food off of that 17 acres of land. So $500,000 at wholesale, not at retail, wholesale. It's a huge amount of food. And we were still waiting for our avocado trees and our lemon trees to monetize, but we were growing these row crops in between. And then we were having small amounts of citrus and small amounts of avocados. But time went on, and California got more and more complicated. And eventually I moved to Texas, and we're starting all over again with very low soil organic matter. And I have to do the process all over again. But that's the privilege of being man on the planet right now, and realizing that we belong here, and it's our job to be the keystone species and step into that role. And so it's my honor to do the hard work of regenerating the soil. And now we're doing it all over again here in Texas, starting back at 0. And our operation here is cattle, pigs, sheep, goats, and vegetable greenhouses, as well as fruits and vegetables. So it's a complicated program with a farm to table environment. We have a on-farm restaurant, a retreat center, 40 beds on the property, different houses and tiny houses and different stuff like that. And so all of that is hopefully going to meld together and make this amazing business that has people come and learn about regenerative agriculture, and then go out into the world and share about this gentleman's lemons or oranges, and say, like, you want to have his mandarins, it has 39% more flavonoids, and the beef from this guy has 5,000 more phytonutrients than this. And that's what I want to be, is that ripple effect in the world. And I'm honored to be doing some tests with InSoil right now, and we're working on how is InSoil able to block some of the hardness of our water and the hardness of our soil, and give the plants an ability to grow by feeding the microbes and locking up some of those hard, the minerals that are making it hard for them to grow. So I'm honored to be doing that investigation with them and that testing with them.
Wow, thank you, Molly. Most of the growers, say do this once is enough, and you're have the gut and trying to do it all over. And that's a lot of land that you're storing right now. And
22 semi trucks. That's what it takes to move a farm from California to Texas.
yeah. And I think one of the data you just brought up, and that I think is very relevant and sound familiar to here in Arizona, is the soil salinity, water alkalinity, and then causing that soil structure is being break down, and so that there's no good amount of water infiltration. And that reminded me, on our farm, and that was 3 years ago when I started, and that land has every inch of the water take about 38 to 42 minutes to going down. And 3 years later, now I can have water infiltration rate that is in 14 to 16 seconds per inch.
Yeah.
And that make the flood
Similar.
irrigation actually doesn't work. And similar as you and Herb and tried the EnSoil Algae, I did a little trial too, and I found algae is such an interesting product just because algae by itself has these terminals that is either hydrophilic or hydrophobic that help preserve the water into the soil. And at the same time, it's really creating a host and community working with the microbe together and doing the nutrient cycling and all the different amazing things and building a soil structure. And that go back to Camille, actually, for EnSoil. What is EnSoil's goal, and why did you guys decide to create this product? And I think in this transitional journey for a lot of grower trying to get rid of the chemicals and then going into a alternative way grow nutrient dense food, how you guys do this and different than other people?
Thanks, Yadi, and thank you so much for inviting us to participate in this with you. So EnSoil Algae is a live cell algae. It's a concentration of this particular species called Chlorella vulgaris, which is a microgreen freshwater algae, a little bit different than maybe the pond scum or the blue-green algae that a lot of you are familiar with. But you can see the algae growing in this photo in our photobioreactors in the lab. This is a naturally occurring organism, but we are growing it in a very high concentration, and then it's bottled, as you can see on the right, in various sizes for our growers to use as a liquid concentrate that's easily integrated into any system. This is a microscopic image in the middle here from some studies we've done on rhizophagy. But really, as a company at Enlightened Soil Core, our mission is to empower farmers and land stewards in the effective and profitable implementation of a regenerative agriculture system. Really, what we're trying to do is work in this whole systems approach, working with nature's design, with biomimicry, with these live cell algae organisms to help farmers understand soil health. We use a very highly consultative and educational approach to boost the profitability of farmers and ranchers and land stewards with this connection, both with our team and with the algae and with the earth as a whole. And we're doing this, to help people reduce their chemical use, but really more broadly to support this transition and to really support the education and empowerment of farmers.
Well, thank you very much. And going back to Herb, like when you talk about your nutrient dense food and you have absolutely only besides one case, there's no insects damage. And for your unsoil tested soil, and how do you see that create differences in addition to your all these regenerative practices, particularly I think cover crop is quite stunning, and trialing 10 plus species of the cover crop, all those things are not easy. I've personally done this before, and then terminating at the right time is always hard. Do you see there's a bio-simulating process, putting EnSoil and using your regenerative practices not seeing a different result compared to alternatively just do one thing rather than both?
Yeah, I approached InSoil like I have been everything else, and I picked some. I ran a test and I replicated it. I picked a really nice block that had a mix of page mandarin and honeybell trees, alternate rows, and I put out. I worked with Meredith and all the folks at InSoil, and looked at a foliar treatment with InSoil, a soil applied, and then an untreated. So it got, regular nutrition, the organic nutrition that I was putting out. But we were so curious what was going to be the impact on the whole microbiome in the soil. And this is what we saw. After 5 weeks, one of the varieties, the page mandarins, like I mentioned sort of in the opening, the goal with citrus is always these leaf flushes. You do everything you can to try to get the next leaf flush and take care of it and grow the tree. And my trees were little, you could see, so I was really working to get the leaves. In InSoil soil treatment, those trees flushed out 5 weeks ahead of the untreated. Was really shocking. And we did quite a few tests in the soil to see. We looked at biomakers and we did a Haney soil health. And again, these were replicated. There was 4 replications. So the soil applied goes out 4 times, the foliar 4 different spots, and the untreated was scattered around. There was actually a jump in the species in the soil, which was interesting. We kind of attributed that to nutrition. And when you get the B crop, the DNA analysis, these are some of the things that they measure. They use whatever species they find, they cluster them together and they know which ones open up phosphorus pathways, which ones are nitrification, which ones extract potassium. And so they call these the pathways. And both of the InSoil treatments had these impact on all these pathways. They both bumped up a little bit the number of species in the soil. The big impact to me was this earlier leaf flush. Now, I only saw it in the soil applied. So then we looked real hard at a Haney soil test, which we took in each of the treatments. And you could actually see what the leaf flush was due to. In the soil applied InSoil, all of the nitrate and all of the ammonia was converted. It disappeared. The tests don't actually measure the next steps in that conversion would be into peptides, then amino acids, and then proteins. But completely all the nitrate, it has to be converted to ammonia, and then it's converted to peptides, then amino acids, then proteins. It was gone. So the microbial activity, which also the respiration spiked in that treatment. So the question, the really interesting one, exactly the cause of that, it could be hormonal impacts from the InSoil. And then the exciting thing to find out, maybe in this next slide, Camille, was this is the work of James White that InSoil has been working with. And he actually can visually see the vulgaris, chlorella vulgaris in the soil and realize that it's full of endophytes. So there are bacteria living within the EnSoil algae, and it can actually penetrate roots and allow those endophytes to enter into the into the crop root. And this is one of the effects of EnSoil, that he's visually detected. Those endophytes then stimulate the crop plant to grow root hairs. And so all of those effects combined resulted in a huge nutritional boost in that variety, in the Page mandarins, to the point that they flushed out new leaves 5 weeks ahead of the other treatments. So that was such a significant impact for me. That was a test I did over 2 years ago. And so since that time, I've been a big advocate of it. And I've used EnSoil now on my whole grove. Since that time, I've put it out probably every 4 to 6 weeks during the season, which for us is March to September. And I just think that's a significant. With biomakers, it's kind of interesting. You can pull out, I mean, there's 1,000 species, but I can quickly find out which ones are dominant. And I've pulled out a couple of them that were significant species from a production point of view. Streptomyces would be bactericidal. So you can see these numbers are the percentages of the bacterial population in the soil. You got the untreated at less than 1. The foliar treatment, it increased 1.36. And then the irrigation applied to EnSoil jumped out there to 3%. So a nice boost. This is one of the ones that changed significantly. So this whole population, microbial population, it's probably being fed, but it's also being changed. There's a lot of interactions. They could be hormonal from the fungus itself. Now, the DNA tests don't pick up. All they do is bacteria and fungi. So it doesn't detect the algae, but it probably is detecting some of the endophytes that are within the algae. And I think there's one more on there, Camille. Yeah, this is a microbacterium that's a nitrogen fixer. Really nice jump, same thing. The foliar application didn't make it down and impact the root population as much. It may have impacted a foliar population, but in the soil, huge jump in this species, which is a really nice nitrogen fixer. So it's been interesting, and it was compelling to me. It really convinced me that there's a lot going on, probably more that we need to learn, but it's exciting to work with a product that's so safe, that's supplementing the natural ecosystem that we've got. It's adding really a brand new component that's not present at all in a lot of the inoculants that we think of and normally use. So back over to you, Yadi.
Yeah, that's a rich set of data. I think in my view, it's that nutrient cycling part is so important, and it makes sense that when you boost your soil health and then be able to build the peptides and in the soil that plant can directly use, and then to chain them up to be protein, and metabolically that plant save a lot of energy to pursue the secondary metabolism, which your results on your citrus that and the antioxidants that in that flavor profile that is showing strongly compared to conventional. That is definitely something that using nitrate-based nitrogen convert into a amine group for that protein, for that amino acid. That's a much longer energy conversion, which so the benefits is self-explanatory. And Mollie, I think, I know for both of you guys, this is the transition for this. Sometimes looking at this data, it makes so much sense, but there's so much hard work going into there. There's a lot of challenge. And not only you're looking at working on the particularly on the regenerative agriculture, to experience those challenges not only once and now is twice, and then also you're kind of moving that into a needle, doing consumer education, getting that knowledge to your customers. What are some of the approach you have, and then to mitigate the risk and also to increase that, education capacity and or challenges you face?
I'm terrible at mitigating the risk. I'm like that jump off the cliff and figure out how you can fly on the way down. But I mean, I guess for me, it's kind of like a calling, and that might sound weird, but when you look at the data that he just shared, or you look at my farm after 18 inches of rain and the neighbors have whole rows of orange trees that went into the creek and I don't lose a single tree, you're seeing that in real time, the food is healthier, and then the farm, the ecosystem is healthier, and then more water is going into our aquifers. And so it's so obvious to those that are standing in nature and working with her why we want to do this. But on the call with these guys the other day, I was present when I got off the phone and then I had another call with another group of producers that were meat producers right after I had the call with these guys. And I realized that really I need to dedicate my life to education, because there's not even going to be these options if we can't make a living making these options, right? And then we're just back to eating the food that everybody is given. And so, I mean, I spend a fair amount of time doing social media. I've done 60 podcasts in the last 90 days when I switched my restaurant from meat, from vegan until serving regenerative meat. I take every opportunity to have this conversation in the world, which is time consuming, but I feel called to help make people understand that cheap food has a cost to it that we're all collectively paying, but we're not maybe present to it when we go to the grocery store and we're like, this one versus this one, when our children's water is poisoned and our, there's endocrine interrupters and sterile soil and water runoff and so many different things in that cheap food. We have to realize that healthy food is not a privilege. It's actually an imperative that we all have to collectively say enough is enough and we deserve food without poison. And so for me, I feel it's a calling that I want to produce food without poison, and I want to educate people so that they are inspired to also, I can only be a mouthpiece for however far I can, but then if I can ripple effect to somebody else and to somebody else and to somebody else, I just want that message to transform the consumer landscape. And so what I'm doing and what Yadi's doing and Glenn's doing is going to be valuable to people. Yadi's making flour. It is not the same as just getting organic flour at Costco. But you look at his and you look at Costco and you're like, okay, well, that's $2 and his is $3.50 a pound. The mom that's struggling at the store, I need her to understand what she's giving her child and what the difference is. And that's what I give my time and my energy to, in hopes that the ripple effect is a better future. I have very young children. I started late. I'm still breastfeeding. So I want the future for them to be food that is healthy. And I think we spend a lot of time capitulating about carbon. And I think we spend very little time talking about the poisons that are in the ecosystem of our food, whether that be plastics and the packaging, or whether that be what we're spraying on our food. And so I want to shift the conversation to nutrient density and less poisons. And so I don't know if there's a risk mitigation in that, but I do believe that once we know something is not right, and we continue to do the thing that is not right, there's a cost, and we can feel that in our heart. And so I don't feel that I have another option but to be all in on regenerative agriculture, all in on healthy soil, and all in on healthy humans.
Well, thank you. That's very inspiring. You say that, and then being the one that actually trialing these on both ends of the equation, agriculture by itself is already hard, and stepping into food system by itself is hard also. But when you combine those together, is just seems like an enormous mountain to move, and that's yeah, creating that platform, having that education is so critical. And of course, there's a lot of growers here, and particularly here in Arizona, a lot of people are looking at this organic or regenerative transition and trying to see what are the best practices. And of course, the first thing people compare is nitrate-based nitrogen. That's the most readily available buying on market, and versus now we're talking about EnSoil algae, Camille, and of course, from the marketing approach, from the cost perspective, and to grow the better food, how does that look like for you guys to market in a different way? How does this financially help producer to reduce their costs if perhaps is that happening from all the examples and growers you guys are trialing with and to give the producer the confidence?
Yes. So I'll share this again and talk a little bit about the benefits and the sort of economic benefit that goes with these. So Mollie and Herb have talked a lot about soil microbial activity, biodiversity, soil health. These things are really important, not just for the health of our soil and therefore our plants and ourselves, but also for the long-term sustainable economic benefits of building healthy soil and investing in that as a part of your agricultural operation, to save yourself money, both in terms of the other inputs you're adding into your system, but also down the line. So these are some of the benefits that we're seeing. Some of these have been touched on. Enhanced chlorophyll and photosynthetic capacity really helps our growers, both with the vibrancy and with the ability for the plants to grow and photosynthesize. We see a lot of stress adaptation, both living stress adaptation with pathogen pressure, but also things like drought and stress and salinity, which I know some of those have been mentioned. And that's a huge cost savings there. If you're able to make your plants more resilient to particular stressors, you can save a lot of risk on losing those crops in a changing environment that we have right now. And then water is a huge one everywhere, and especially in Arizona. So many of our growers have been able to reduce irrigation costs by improving things like water infiltration and water retention in their soils. I know Yadi loves to talk about the micro water cycle between the soil and the plants, and specifically with cover crops. And that's something that's super important, and that InSoil really supports by building soil structure with the microbial activity. And then, of course, the nutrient availability and density. This is improving nutrient cycling. Our growers are seeing more density in terms of the things that Herb has showed us with vitamins and carotenoids. We've also seen this in animal feed with protein content, fat content, nutrient availability in terms of the actual quality of the feed and the digestibility, which are measurements that if you test things like alfalfa or hay, you will see on a nutrient density test, and those values have increased. So I'll show you a brief image and then pass it back to you. This is a hay grower up in Montana who has treated bales with EnSoil. These are greener. They're the ones on the bottom. They're also heavier. He can only carry one of these with his tractor as opposed to two with the non-EnSoil treated ones. And then this is from an alfalfa grower who did a nutrient density test, and you can see the changes in the protein content, the feed value, the feed quality, and those digestible nutrients. If anyone is interested in other data that we have on this, I'd be more than happy to share. So please reach out to our team. And with these sort of holistically, we are looking at, of course, improving profitability for the growers from all of these different angles, whether it's nutrition or water management or soil health or plant health. So.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, I really enjoy this conversation, particularly Herb and Mollie, as a grower myself. And, you know, when we look at from the broader spectrum right now here in Arizona, is water issue, water crisis, drought has been swamping into our, you know, kind of arena, and everybody's focusing on is certainly different than what you guys experience in Georgia and or California or Texas. Each location have its own context, has its own individualism and challenge or benefits, right? And of course, the algae could help in some degree in our environment, helping holding that water as producer transition into different places, as where my farm has seen these multi-species cover crop, up to 16 species cover crop. I only have to irrigate them in hot summer in one time and self-water cycling. And every morning I have some small water cycle has dew on the ground, which in the hydrological cycle, researcher will tell you that's nearly impossible. But in nature, that is can create that abundance. And a lot of time producers do ask these is, well, herbs in Georgia, I mean Arizona is different. In Mollie, it's in Texas or California, we're different. And if you give one remark, one, thoughts in this transition process to encourage our grower here in Arizona, what would you summarize? What would you say?
Me or her?
Well, I think I will invite both of you to give some comments and sense for that.
I want to jump in and say what Mollie was describing about this being a calling is so important. Our country is in a health crisis. I don't know how much longer we can last. And it's getting worse. And we know now that it's the food we're eating. And this is a calling, I think, that all of us have. And I feel exactly the same way. And you're exactly right. We're all different situations as far as what our farming needs are. Some of us need nutrition, some water, some, and I saw the same things Mollie did. The trees grow slower. When I tested it on my farm, they're only a third the size of conventionally grown trees in the road next to them. And so it makes it a challenge economically. I know my fruit now, I've proved, is 5 or 10 times more nutritious, but I won't have as much of it. And it's maybe a year later. So there's a big, the only thing we can do is educate and get this message out there that people need to realize that they can find and get nutrient dense food. It's more complicated for us to grow. So there's a cost to doing that. But I think that's what we need to do is make sure that we educate and do it as well as we can. And it is a calling. We need to make a difference. We have a chance to make a difference in our society by doing this.
I want to say, though, that with regenerative agriculture, there is ways to stack functions. And in stacking those functions, you're able to maybe make money. And like with my citrus orchard, we grew row crops in between, and so that I could monetize the time leading up. So I literally used a cash crop as a cover crop, try to capture that small water cycle, try to keep the ground fully covered, but then harvesting that and being able to then bring that to market while I'm waiting for those lemons or avocados or oranges to come to market. Or here in Texas, our fields were very degraded. People just had cows on them, no rotational grazing, nothing, because they just were using it for the tax exemption. But I'm able to have 40 cows on a much smaller amount of land than other people because I move my cows twice a day. And so you might think that's crazy that I'm moving my cows twice a day, but I'm building soil. I'm creating better water infiltration. I'm growing dairy cow. I'm making milk, right? And we're getting our grade A dairy permit, but I'm also growing beef. Their babies are turning in to beef, grass fed and grass finished. And this is stacking this functions, right? Doing multiple things where I'm growing this cover crop And then I might graze it off twice and then bale the third time before I'm gonna then put my winter cover crop in. Or we feed our chickens meat. And by feeding our chickens meat, we're getting a local resource for food rather than an intensive resource like grain. I'm getting local offcuts from the butcher. And then I flail mow that after I put my chickens in my fruit orchards or my pecan orchards. Then the chickens eat that meat and I move the meat row to row each week. I feed them in a different place. Then I flail mow that. And what is that? That's blood meal, bone meal, feather meal, chicken poop. What is organic fertilizer made out of? Then we spraying this InSoil and putting in another crop. And you can't believe, I mean, 2 years ago, I tried to plant some stuff in this garden that we did this with, and nothing grew. Anything that did grow, the leaf cutter ants took it away and nothing grew. And now I have these beautiful gardens between these pear trees with no purchased fertilizer. No, there is no purchased fertilizer. I'm feeding my 350 egg birds a free thing. I have to go pick it up, but a free thing. And then that is creating the space for my next garden. And then I'm moving my chickens to somewhere else. And so it is a more complicated offering what I'm doing, but we are stacking those functions where my egg birds are then creating fertilizer for the corn crop, which is also fertilizing the trees that are in between. So if we can do those kind of stacking functions, it can be profitable if you can find those 3 or 4 things that you could stack together and have them all feed into each other. And so my words of encouragement would be, look at your operation and just kind of one item at a time. InSoil is such a simple, and we've had amazing results, like not getting as much spider mites in the greenhouse and being able to take the stress and so many different things that InSoil has helped with. It's a really easy thing. You can just put it in your irrigation line and you're good to go, right? There's no heavy lifting there and it's not that expensive. And so that's an amazing option. But then look at other ways. What could I bring in? I'm growing grain. Well, could I graze off in the winter time? Could I put in a cover crop and graze and fertilize the ground that way? And when you move the animals every day, you're keeping them in a so tight area that their microbiology, their pee, their poop, and their spit is being evenly distributed on your field. And they're just doing enough disturbance to get your field ready for your next grain crop. And so could I bring in some animals and could I make that another revenue source? Like, my words of encouragement would look at your operation and see if there's some other layer you could add in that feeds the soil and could feed your family.
That's amazing. Wow. Thanks, Herb and Molly. Those are great comments, and I love one thing you guys said at different time, and then talking about particularly on the sprinkler irrigation with the algae. And I wonder, for vegetable growers, maybe they could do a sprinkler irrigation. Not only they can have a foliar spray at the same time they got a soil spray, and maybe Herb, that's a different data point that hopefully you can add into your data book, and probably is double amount of the capacity on the microbes particularly. Going back, and so Camille, how can growers or people who are on this channel find you guys' product and how to purchase them?
Yeah, thanks, Yadi. And I just want to echo what Molly said about stacked solutions. We are very, very passionate about being used in a system in conjunction with all of these other tools. EnSoil plays really, really well with other things. So I encourage you all to continue coming to Yadi's series and learn about all these other wonderful tools in the regenerative space and pair them together, because that's what they're meant to be used for. So in terms of ordering EnSoil and finding more information on us, we're going to be sending out an email, follow-up email to everybody who registered for this webinar with a discount code. The discount will be 30% off of any order. And there will be a code that you can enter in the purchase order form, which will also be in our email tomorrow. You can visit our website, ensoilalgae.com. There is a green button in the upper right-hand corner that says Shop Now, where you can place an order online. We will also have that link in the email tomorrow. And then we'll be sending out more educational resources, some of our research, some good infographics and educational tools for anyone that's interested in exploring those. And then our team is a resource. There's 3 of us on the call today, Meredith, myself, and Yazzie, and we have lots of other team members. We would all love to connect with you, talk with you, learn more about your operation and how we can support you in any way, whether that's with algae or other tools. So please feel free to reach out to us and book a call. Our information is everywhere online, and we would love to connect. And again, Yadi, just thank you so much for including us in this wonderful webinar. And as a partner of Dry Co-op, we're very grateful for that.
Yeah, and oh, Molly, go ahead.
I forgot one point that I wanted to say about the InSoil. So we treated this whole orchard with InSoil, and then my son put the sheep in that orchard, and he was like, I think it's fine. There's so much forage. It's like we had this crazy cover crop, and I sent Meredith pictures of like the one side and the other of the cover crop, but it's like the sheep are no way they're going to eat the trees. And of course, the first 3 rows of trees that the sheep were in the first day, they ate the skin, the bark off of the trees. And I FaceTime my dad, and my dad's like, they're done. You should just order trees right now for next year. Those trees are dead because they stripped the entire thing. We did lose 4 trees, but this was 3 rows of apple trees. We only lost 4 or 5 of them. And the sheep had stripped, you know, so normally when a tree has had its bark stripped all the way around, it's going to die. It's not communicating to itself. But for whatever reason, the InSoil gave it enough stress, ability to deal with that stress, that those trees have recovered, and only 5 of them died. And my dad's, who's a tree farmer for, I don't know, his whole life, said, for sure those are dying. You should just order new trees. So I forgot to mention that, but it was like, we were not treating necessarily the trees. We were treating the cover crop between the trees for this thing with Meredith. And then that was an ancillary thing that happened.
Wow, that's amazing that trees can survive after the algae that is impacted positively. And we are running out of time due to respect to everybody's time schedule, and we are gonna be sending out the recording of this webinar to everybody to review. If there's any additional question, and feel free to visit our website, dry.coop, and also you can email us at membership@dry.coop for any question you may have, and then we can relay to our speakers and then to answer all of that to you. And also for Arizona grower, just let you guys know that Dry Co-op is working with InSoil trying to figure out the bulk watering. That being said, if enough smaller grower, enough acres that is being incurred, and we were able to, at a cooperative level, purchasing bulk and then reduce that shipping and discount price and building together, and then we can send out to the growers here in our region for a more affordable alternative for you guys to grow food in a better way. So with that, thank you very much for everybody who attended, and then good luck with everybody and who are in the field, and it's still really hot out here. Stay hydrated. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Yadi.
you. Take care.
Enjoyed it, everybody.